Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for tuning in. I want to talk today about what it looks like to be single while in partnership. And some of you guys are going to listen to that and think, "What? Is Natalie about to suggest we all open up our relationships?" No, I'm not going to do that. But I want to speak to something that I really used to struggle with back in the days when I had a lot of anxiety in my relationship. That being, I used to have this big hang up over the fact that I never got to be single. So if you never got to be single, maybe you met your partner really young and you never broke up, or you've had a string of back-to-back monogamous relationships and you just never got to be alone without having someone to be in a relationship with. Although you might have loved the people you're with and you might love the person you're with very much, if you never got to be single, you might lament about that a little bit, and I want to normalize that. So, although I want to emphasize that grieving is normal, I also want to reassure you that there is a way to feel freedom while being in a committed relationship, and the way we do that is through the mindset of the single person. So, if that gets you excited, I'm very happy because I certainly today in my relationship feel more free than I ever have before. And there was a 3-month period between my ex-boyfriend and Preston, which was very admittedly short, and I would have loved to have had more time. And I highly recommend, if you're able to be single, if you're single right now, if you can stretch it out a little longer, I recommend it, knowing full well that I did not do that. But if you can, that's great. But if not, that's okay too, because you can still find yourself while you're in a relationship. So, that's really nice, okay? So let's get started. I want to stress that there was a time when I legitimately felt so much resentment towards my partner for taking my single life away from me. Even though I loved him very much and wanted and still do want to build a life with him, I felt triggered by people that said, "Oh, you just need to break up and hook up with a bunch of people and get it out of your system." I saw messages that talked about and glamorized and romanticized leaving the good guy that you love in order to find yourself. And I wondered, my gosh, do I need to do that too? I had this weird, maybe even masochistic desire to break my own heart in the name of discovering something that I thought I clearly didn't have. And to be honest, I think that if I had broken up, or maybe even followed through on that one time I tried to take a break with Preston, I think I actually would have found myself, but not necessarily because of the breakup specifically. And I'm going to explain why in just a bit. But before I do that, I want to back up and take a little blast to the past into my pharmacy education. Believe it or not, I have a pharmaceutical science degree. And there are a lot of things I learned while studying pharmacy that didn't have anything to do with relationships. But there was plenty of science that I learned, and there were some really good metaphors about medicine that I have kept with me. I'm still paying student loans for these metaphors. But the one thing I want to talk about today is probably one of the most valuable things I learned in my pharmacy education at UC Irvine was this, and you data junkies and science people are going to love this. Correlation does not equal causation. So for those of you that don't know what correlation and causation are, there's a famous slogan in statistics that correlation does not imply causation. And by the way, I am reading a quote from the internet. So this is not my quote. We know that there is a statistical correlation between eating ice cream and drowning, for instance, but ice cream consumption does not cause drowning. However, we can see that increased ice cream consumption and drowning rates both have a common cause in warm summer weather. So it's not that eating ice cream causes drowning. It's just that the warmer it gets, the more people eat ice cream. But also the warmer it gets, people go swimming. And so there are higher rates of drowning because there are more people in the water. So there's a correlation between more people eating ice cream and more people drowning, but that doesn't mean that eating ice cream causes drowning. So that a correlation means there's a relationship, but it's not a causatory? I don't know these words. Causation-based relationship. So somehow this is very clear. We have no issue believing this statement when it comes to data and graphs, but when someone says, 6 months after my breakup, I am so happy I left, we take that to assume causation. The breakup is what caused the happiness. In this podcast episode, I want to present another perspective by asking this question. When someone goes through a breakup, what do they typically start doing? Well, I don't know about you, but a lot of these people who go through breakups, they start taking better care of themselves. They start putting themselves together, potentially preparing for a new partner. They shop for new clothes. They start taking good care of their personal hygiene. They nurture their social life and turn to their communities. They go to therapy and hire a personal trainer. They lean into their purpose. They start meditation and mindfulness practices. They go travel solo. So, yeah, these are all things that will help you find yourself. But the thing I want to ask you is, why wait to be single to do these things? So, did the breakup cause the happiness, or did the self-care that you did in response to the breakup cause your happiness? I guess we'll never know. Anyway, people do not often make this connection. They will enter a relationship that makes them feel alive, and then they quit putting in the effort they put in when they were single, and then bemoan the loss of their individuality and singledom when it was a choice to lose themselves in the first place. Relationships are not the cause of losing oneself. That is 100% a personal choice. Therefore, becoming single is not a prerequisite to finding yourself either. I'm going to say that one more time because it feels really good to say. Relationships aren't the cause of losing oneself. That's 100% a personal choice. And therefore, becoming single is not a prerequisite to finding yourself either. Hollywood and social media have done a really good job glamorizing breakups and finding yourself as a process. There's movies like Wild and Eat, Pray, Love, which showcase women leaving marriages that are no longer a fit and then traveling the world. Now, full disclosure, I love these movies. They touched me deeply, particularly my wild, uncapturable free spirit. And at the same time, I was deeply triggered by these films. And it was only after I started giving myself permission to travel as much as I wanted, especially in my 20s while being in a relationship, that I fully realized two things. Number one, the extent of how much I had tricked myself into thinking my partner was holding me back from living my best life. And two, that being single actually wouldn't be that much better. I remember the first time I gave myself permission to take a 3-week trip alone to Austria, which I did 7 years into my relationship, and realizing that people weren't flocking to me and hitting on me nonstop when I arrived in Vienna. If I was going to have any connections, I was going to have to get vulnerable. And get vulnerable I did. And that gave me freedom. So your relationship status is not what makes you trapped or free. It's your willingness to be vulnerable and play the edges of yourself. Now, in a few months, in between hosting some retreats in Austria, which I can't believe are sold out and waitlisted, I'm going to be taking a quick trip to France to go to a jazz festival. I'm going to go see Jacob Collier. And I'm going alone. I was really tempted to bring Preston, but he wasn't super interested. Now, I was inviting him, but I secretly was feeling the bubble of a thrill internally by the idea of going by myself. The reason I wanted him there was for comfort, but my adventurous side was also sitting inside, just kind of hoping he was going to say no. And so when he did, I felt this brief sting of disappointment and nervousness, but then once it subsided, I got excited, and excited is in all caps. Now, last year, here's another example of what it can look like to practice being single while in partnership, taking care of yourself, prioritizing your aliveness and your dreams. Last year, Press and I were in Medellin, Colombia, after our wedding. And we both had just time. We had 4 months of being there. We were hanging out with our friends. We were getting massages and taking care of ourselves in a way that we hadn't before. We had the finances. We had the time. I was running my business. And I had this feeling that before we settled down with kids and a house, I wanted to live alone because I never had lived alone before. I'd always wanted my own really nice studio apartment. And Preston never got to have college dorm life. When we met at UC Irvine, he was living with his parents, who were very close to the university. And he stayed there all throughout college until he graduated and a little bit after that. So now we were in Medellin, and he had the option of going to this Spanish school / hostel where he could practice Spanish while also living on that little campus. And the Spanish school happened to be somewhat close to an apartment that I had my eye on, an Airbnb. And we thought, we just got married. We haven't had kids yet. Preston wants to go live at the Spanish school. I want to stay at this fancy apartment. It's pretty close to each other. Oh my gosh, we could date each other and do the thing that we never got to do when we were younger. And so we decided to do it. And we spent 1 month living separately. We were able to afford it. What a blessing. And we had a blast. We ended up missing each other a lot. Preston ended up coming over to visit a lot. It was very sexy. Such a wonderful experience and experiment about nurturing your individuality while in partnership. And it was a great medicine for our sex life. So if you have that option, I recommend it. So that's just another example. Some people might wonder, well, if I was single, I'd hook up with people, and I can't do that. So F you, Nat. And to that I say, that is true. That sucks. And I want to present a couple options for that. Who knows? Some of you listening might decide to share that desire with your partner and consequently decide to open things up. But I just want you to know that that will come with a new set of problems. Others of you might feel liberated just by verbally expressing the desire, but not actually following through on it. Believe it or not, we don't have to go into two extremes. Some people think, okay, I can either stuff this desire down and pretend that I don't have it, I'm never going to name it, or I have to express this desire and I have to have it. You realize there is a middle. There's a middle step, which is just, I want permission to name this thing, to admit that it's there, but I don't have to actually act on it. There have been instances in my relationship with Preston where we've admitted that we want something or someone or some arrangement or to act out some fantasy, but we don't actually want to do it. We just want permission to want it without actually acting on it. So some of you guys might just express a desire verbally, but not actually desire to follow through on it. Others of you listening might want to explore with other people a little bit more than you currently are right now, but not go all the way or not go into full-blown polyamory. For example, I do Argentine tango, and now my husband also does Argentine tango. This is our way of having intimacy with other people without having affairs or without having an open relationship. If any of you have ever watched Argentine tango, and I try to talk about it here and there, it's a very beautiful dance, there's something called a close embrace. You are literally mashed up against their body and flying across the floor. It's so intimate, so beautiful. A lot of people call Argentine tango vertical sex. And that arrangement works for us. We get intimacy with other people energetically and even physically in the sense that you're in a close embrace, but we're not getting naked and having sex with people. For us, that's really nice because we're not never touching other people in a sensual way and never getting to explore other people energetically, but we're also not taking it all the way. Others of you might decide to keep things exactly the way they are, but give yourself freedom in other ways. Maybe that's a new hobby, travel, a new career, etc. Personally, and I realize that this is a luxury and I'm extremely privileged to have been able to do this, but I have done a lot of travel to the point where I have actually got it out of my system. I never thought that would be possible. I fortunately, just doing Instagram and podcasting and running an online business full time, I've been able to be running around for a couple years, and I'm tired and I'm done for a while. I'm ready to settle down. My inner free spirit is quite winded, and it turns out I don't know if I'm fully a free spirit completely. I think I'm mostly a homebody now that I've done it for a long time. So in a weird way, I got the quote unquote single life out of my system without needing to break up. I also want to point out that hooking up with people is not freedom. Not the kind of freedom that you're looking for that's really lasting. It would be a temporary release, which is beautiful. That's fine. But if you're thinking that hooking up with other people is going to pull you out of the discomfort of your relationship, I mean, you could do it to find out. It won't. Because being in a relationship is not what traps us. It's ourselves. If you're feeling the longing to be single, the answer might not necessarily be breaking up, but taking responsibility for your aliveness and sense of adventure. What would you do if you were single? What are you not giving yourself permission to do because you're in a relationship? Who are you not giving yourself permission to embody within yourself? I recommend that after you get done listening to this podcast, do something wild for yourself that's still within the rules of your relationship. It should feel indulgent chances are, if you feel a little guilty, you're on the right track. I'm so curious. Write me on Instagram and tell me what you decided to do. If you're a Spotify listener, after you get done making your indulgent, crazy choice, maybe that's booking a trip somewhere or booking a trip to a concert by yourself or with some friends. If you're listening on Spotify, there's an option to comment on the podcast episode. Let me know what you decide to do. And this is the way that you can have your cake and eat it too. And that's it. If you feel stuck, just know that I have an option called a Wizio. You can ask me any question and I'll make you a custom video response. And if you're a woman that's frightened of commitment, my online course, Both Feet In, can help you. It will help you understand why you feel so anxious about your healthy relationship, learn to trust your decision to stay or to leave. It's really about decision making. Clear the emotions that are clouding your ability to see your relationship clearly, and also learn how to change the patterns in your external relationship. Also, as of a couple months ago, I started hosting a live meditation Q&A and sharing circle on Patreon. Our next call is most likely going to be on June 20th, maybe June 19th, but most likely June 20th. I will include links to all of these in the show notes. So, I'm curious, how are you going to cultivate the mindset of the single person while in partnership? Let me know. And that's all. Thanks so much for tuning in. And until next time, take wonderful care of you. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.